So, NotsoErudite, a user who I've encountered, via Prime Kai's whole open panel stuff where he just lets any Yahoo come on, made this post on YouTube yesterday, and those of you in the Discord, because I shared it to the Discord, and I shared it to the house, and I wanted to know your guys' thoughts on it. I really wanted to know my trans friends. I really wanted to know their thoughts on it, but I don't know if they've been paying attention to the Discord lately. But the Erudite shared this. Oh, it was 2 days ago. Okay. Following Destiny's ban on Twitch, right? And the thing about Destiny's ban on Twitch is that for the most part, the people who seem to be like defending him and having his back and everything through his ban, even though his ban very much is justified, are people who Destiny was nice to and who like Destiny helped like build platforms by giving them exposure and views and shit like that, which is I feel like is kind of silly to me. Some people might think that I'm not being, you know what? This is my Unbound Dark. I don't give a fuck what they think about me at this point. In many cases, these are the people that are like, well, Destiny was nice to me and he helped me get started and shit. And it's like, okay, that doesn't absolve him from the horrible shit, the indefensible and horrible shit that he's done recently, but go off, I guess. So they shared this. Destiny Vosh, Sonsol Temp, Lauren Southern, who's a neo-Nazi, bans are getting handed out on Twitch like Macy's Day Parade candy. Now, Erudite is also Canadian. Maybe up there they have it's called the Macy's Day Parade, but something tells me they meant Macy's Day Parade, but again, it could be something that it's just up there in Canada that I don't know about. If you want to support me, consider the tier options I'm working on presently for this YouTube channel. Even if bans are unrolled, a lot of political streamers need to seriously consider if a Twitch partnership is worth it. Or, here's an idea. You could just think about things before you say them. How about that? People could just think about things before they say them. Also, it's not really a good look when you like dive in to like defend people. Like, I mean, does she? Oh yeah, that's right. There was a debate that Erudite had, or was on like a panel for or whatever, where they were talking about should we deplatform Nazis, and Erudite doesn't think we should deplatform Nazis. So it does not surprise me that Erudite put Lauren Southern in there, because Erudite's one of those people who thinks you can change the minds of Nazis. Anyways, so then she makes this weird meme. Streamers who unironically state that they can do anything to someone they have deemed evil and it's fine. Most likely, I feel like she's talking about Keffels here, and how Keffels got Destiny banned for hate rating. And then streamers who have forged the left space calling questions to transport advantages and disadvantages. And so I commented on this. Can I see my comment? Okay, yeah. Is questioning trans people's performance... This is what I commented. Is questioning trans people's performance in sports something that actually needs to be considered at this point? Is this helpful / meaningful to the conversation? I would understand if trans people are shattering records, but they aren't. These kinds of questions are not really helpful for discussion and just add validity to the alt-right's oftentimes very outrageous and blown out of proportion claims about trans people. Kind of weird to me that someone with such a decent-sized trans audience would post something like this, but okay. Let's go to some of the replies. I want to go to her reply in particular. Okay. Because somebody else agreed with me, but I want to go to this reply right here. Unrelated, but have you seen the clip where Lauren Southern talks about how some has become a monoculture, or meaning that there are only stores, etc., from foreign cultures around, and then a reporter prints out there's an English pub right. Listen, Nazis are stupid. That's just all it is. Nazis are fucking stupid, okay? So she says, it needs to be talked about because it's a public obsession. I agree that this conversation misses the more significant portion of the whole conversation, getting gender-affirming therapies to people younger. That would, in large part, answer the sports issue. These kinds of questions are critical because our culture is wrestling with them. But we're only wrestling with these questions because they're constantly thrown out there by the far right to be transphobic and to paint trans people in this negative light. Nobody gave a fuck, okay, about women's sports before trans people were talked about being participating in women's sports. Before that, nobody gave two fucks about swimming, okay? Nobody did. Lie and say you did. Especially if you ain't a swimmer. Lie and say you did. I think I've heard of that person. Nobody. But the point that I was making in my comment was that you're basically introducing a far right talking point that has no merit and no reason to be brought up in this discussion. It would be one thing if trans people were shattering records, but they're not. Didn't one trans woman who was doing pretty good in the men's division or the men's bracket when she was, a guy, didn't she recently just get 8th place or some shit in the women's division? Come on now. Come on. No one gives a shit about female sports unless there was minimal clothing on set. That is also true. That is also freaking true, Curbs. That is also true. 100%. Because if I remember correctly, the same people that are now the people that are now all of a sudden having questions about women's sports are the exact same people who a year ago or some shit were laughing at women's sports and talking about the uniforms and shit. Miss me with all of this shit, okay? Just miss me with it completely. One was sports are competition of biological advantages to begin with. That is true. That is also true. And that's the thing that a lot of people need to understand about this, and part of the reason why I'm kind of taken aback how someone like Erudite, who claims to be someone who looks at facts, logic, data, statistics, and everything, is not looking at the data that shows us that trans people are not blowing shit out of the water in sports and what have you, and are and a lot of the far right talking points about trans people having an unfair advantage in women's sports or some shit is not actually substantiated by any sort of actual data, and literally it's just, hey, this person, regardless of if they're trans or cis, is a freak of nature, which is why they're able to excel in these sports fields. In these sports fields. For instance, take Michael Phelps. You might as well call him Shark Boy and slap gills on the motherfucker. Make him turn him into a fish at this point. Dude is a giant man with the wingspan of a fucking albatross, and it doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters all that much, at all. If he's trans or cis, he's still gonna be dominating in swimming because he's literally built fucking different, okay? He's literally, these people are literal mad scientist experiments. These people that are good sports. Same thing with basketball, with a lot of basketball players. For the most part, those people are freakishly tall. How many people do you know in your everyday life that are 7 goddamn foot? How many people do you know? But every other basketball player is 7 goddamn foot. What? What? They're at the top of the charts because biologically, they are exceptions to the norm. Them being trans, them being cis or whatever, doesn't really have much, if anything at all, to do with it. talking about this when there's other things that could be talked about, such as protecting transgender children who are from like Republican lawmakers, is a much better conversation to be had than talking about trans people in sports that nobody gave two shits about until trans people were being considered and trans people started participating in these sports, and people were proving that they just don't know how the fucking science works. Volleyball players request more clothes and everyone threw a fit. That too, I remember that. Yeah, that too. Michael Phelps. Oh, Michael Phelps is 6. Yeah, Michael Phelps is 6'3", but I'm talking when I said like that, I still think that's freakishly tall, okay? Because I'm not 6'3", okay? Yeah, show me one tall person who hasn't been asked if they play basketball, especially a black person. Like, that shit's fucking racist. Anyways. The point is that we have, like, no data on this, really. Or if anything is that it's, like, blown out of proportion by the far right. We don't need to be talking about this. And it's distracting from the true conversations that we should be having about trans people basically being hunted down by the fucking Republicans, okay? I really don't appreciate your moralizing at the end. What moralizing did I do? Kind of weird. I mean, is she talking about how I said kind of weird to me that someone with such a decent-sized trans audience would post something like this? But okay, yeah, that she would post a far-right talking point? Yeah, like, that doesn't need to be considered? Yeah, I'm gonna moralize. I'm gonna post that shit at the end. Like, fuck? I don't really appreciate you moralizing at the end. The topic matters because it absolutely impacts trans folks. Yeah, because people are talking about it to solidify or push transphobic rhetoric. That's the point. For someone who is like, who considers themselves to be like well versed in debate or some shit, who considers themselves to be like well versed in debate and some shit, they sure are following for like the biggest strawmans on this shit and giving it credence. And this is something I've been talking about with the left too in particular, is how like Erudite doesn't consider themselves on the left, I don't think, but like for the most part, okay, or in many cases, we focus on people in situations that really don't need to be focused on, and that only exist and only pop up to distract from actual progress and distract from us like actually making and bringing about meaningful change. We don't need to waste our breath on something like trans sports when there's really when it's all so new. We really just need to see how this, dare I say, plays out. There's a pun there, a sports pun there, and whatever. It seems more valuable to honestly contend with the issue and advocate for strategies that can lead to the inclusion of trans athletes. Again, there are trans people who are literally being murdered, but tell me again why we need to care about like trans people participating in women's sports, in sports that again nobody gave a shit about, but whatever. There is a claim of perceived unfairness for cis women/trans men that seems to have empirical evidence leaning toward legitimizing. Ignoring these issues makes it appear that advocates for and trans communities are unwilling to contend with these serious concerns, which they are. No, we're not. We just don't need to, because again, there's really not that much evidence there. And I asked her later on, did she respond? No, she didn't. She didn't respond to my other point. To my response, but whatever. I have intentionally spoken to trans members that I have a pre-established friendship with. I have trans friends, yay, giving me the whole, like, I'm not racist, I have black friends energy. And I'm not saying that, like, Erudite is transphobic or anything, but they have voiced serious concerns about these Twitch bans, and the trans advocates I have spoken to, I wonder, has Erudite talked to Keffels, a person who was a victim of Destiny's hate rating and a victim of Destiny's abuse and belittlement and shit? Has she talked to Keffels? Or has Erudite viewed Keffels as being too far left for her to talk to? I wonder. And maybe I just don't know. Well, thanks for dropping by, Sanita Senpai. Thank you for Sanita Pani, sorry, I called you senpai, my bad. Take that as a compliment. They have voiced serious concerns about Twitch bans and the trans advocates I have spoken to. I understand this will be a biased sample and there may be a pressure to answer in such a way. However, unless you have proof of harm or proof that I may be fraudulent, I don't see the purpose in much of your commenting. Okay, but like, where's the... And then I asked her, I said, okay, where is the empirical evidence that you mentioned? Like I said, the majority of the time when people bring up transgender people in sports, a lot of the time it's laced in transphobia. For Pete's sake, we didn't even care about half the sports being brought up here until the right started being transphobic with their concerns for women's sports. From what I've seen, there's no reason to get concerned about this until there's actual empirical evidence that trans people are absolutely dominating their sports. I feel like our discussion will be better directed at anti-LGBTQ, mainly anti-trans legislation than at women's sports. Like, there are trans people who are literally being murdered just for being trans, and Congress people targeting trans people for literally no reason. These are the things we should be directing our attention to, protecting the lives of trans people. Anyways, what do you guys think? People in the people in chat right now, like, what do you guys think? Like, was I uncharitable? Like, did I like say something bad? Did I say something wrong? Did I overstep my boundary here? Am I the transphobe with what I said? Am I the transphobe? Because, like, y'all know, if I'm wrong, I'll walk back on it if I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong here. I really don't think that I'm wrong here. Like, 9 times out of 10, whenever we look at, like, research and data and statistics about trans people, like, being these absolute monsters in their sports fields, it's like shit from the far right that has been blown out of proportion, and I don't really see a point to it. And it's just distracting from the fact that, like, oh, while we're looking at this, another black trans woman has been murdered. Just seems to me like we could more along the lines of direct our attention elsewhere. I don't know. Seems bad. Like, y'all are getting so, like, people are getting so up in arms about, like, transphobic and problematic. Like, okay, the Vosh thing I could understand. I could understand. There's an argument there. There's an argument there for why Vosh should be banned or whatever, or should be unbanned or whatever, or some shit, right? But, like, Destiny has done so many reprehensible, bad, just shitty things. Like the shit that I showed you guys earlier on in this stream about the black on black crime type shit, or what have you, perpetuating that harmful narrative and that harmful stereotype that doesn't do anything except perpetuate and further white supremacy and what have you. Like, the fact that, like, she went to defend this person, and maybe she just doesn't know Destiny's history, which, okay, fine, but, you know, it just, I find it hard to believe that, like, someone like Destiny, when you're on Twitch politics, you don't know his history or whatever. But that's just me. That's just me.